Hello, my name is Raquel Garcia, and today I will be presenting my Theories of Literacy project. I have three very important theories I'm going to be talking about today. The first is the theory of cognitive development, and the second is the theory of literacy development, and the final is, I'm not sure if it's necessarily a theory, but it's the stages of modeled reading, which we will be also talking about later on. So who originated these theories? The theory of cognitive development was originated by Jean Piaget, and the theory of literacy development was originated by Donald Holdaway. Now, the stages of reading have been proposed by a number of people, but these four stages have been agreed upon amongst all these various theorists. So let's begin with the theory of cognitive development. So what is the theory of cognitive development? So Piaget established these four stages that describe the way in which children, as they age, as they mature, how their development changes. So there's these four stages, and the first one is the sensory motor period, and this is from birth to 2 years of age. The second is a pre-operational period, and this is from 2 years to 7 years of age. The third is a concrete operational period, and this is from 7 years to 11 years of age. And the final stage is a formal operational period, and this is from 11 years up to the age of adults. So we're going to just talk a little bit about the sensory motor period, and how, like I said, this is from birth to 2 years of age. So at this stage, the child's thinking or cognition is mostly based upon what the child sees and hears and touches, their senses. That's basically why it's called sensory motor. So they're toddlers experimenting, trying to learn how the world works. They usually put things in their mouth, and this is why we see babies putting things in their mouth, and they're exploring, trying to learn. And at this stage, the child does not yet possess enough language, obviously, as they're a baby. So one of the primary things that Piaget, and there was an experiment conducted, and I'm going to be showing you a small video of it, was called object permanence, which basically means that even though the object doesn't appear to physically be there, it still is there. So there's this video where, let me just show you.
During their first year, however, infants will learn an important concept: object permanence. Everything has a life of its own, even if it is out of sight.
So as you can see, the lady was playing with the rattle, and she hid it underneath the blanket. And although the child could not physically see the object anymore, the child was aware that the object was still there. This is called object permanence, and this is also why babies like to play peekaboo, where they hide behind their hands. Parents hide behind their hands, and they enjoy that. So the next period is a pre-operational period, and this is from 2 years to 7 years of age. And this is when the most language development occurs, like little sponges with the vocabulary and the talking. And they begin to categorize and organize his or her world with words. At this age, they are very egocentric, and I can fend for that because I have a 4-year-old daughter, and yes, it is all about me, me, me. At this stage, their thinking is very concrete. It is nothing abstract. It's just what they see is what they understand. So there's another example. I'm going to show you another example for pre-operational period.
Can you look at these two glasses? Do you think that they have the same amount of juice? You think they have the same? Okay. Now we're going to pour this juice into this glass. Now, do you think that this glass has more juice? This glass has more juice? Or do you think that they have the same amount?
That one.
This one has more, and why do you think that this one has more?
Because it's taller.
So as you can see with the little girl, even though we know as adults that there is the same amount of liquid in the cups, even though they poured it in the taller cup, but the little girl, since she is in the pre-operational period, like I said, nothing is abstract. It's just very concrete. So what she could see was that the taller glass had more juice. It looked like it appeared to have more juice, and that's why she said, even though she saw the lady pour it right in front of her, she saw that the one had the taller glass had more juice in it, appeared to have more juice in it, and that's how they think at this stage. The next is the concrete operational period, which it is from 7 years to 11 years of age. Now, at this stage, they begin to think a little bit more abstractly about things, and they have a little bit more of creative problem-solving skills. They lose a little bit of the egocentrism, and they begin to gain a fuller understanding of mental operations. They can do maybe like mental math in their head without having to, count with their fingers or things like that. So here's a little example. Now, the first clip is going to be of a little boy. Now, he is not yet at the concrete operational period. So they're giving him a set of rules, and the lady's reading the rules to them. And like I said, when they don't have that abstract form of thinking, it's just whatever they know, whatever makes sense to them, that's what they're gonna respond to. So, and then you will see the little girl, which is at the concrete operational period, and how her response differs from the little boy.
So first we're going to look at these two cups right here. Do you think there's the same amount of juice in this glass as there is in that glass? There you go. Okay. So we're going to take the juice from this glass and pour it into this one right here. Okay, so now we're going to look at this glass and that one. So
Well, all right, now the next. All right, so the next stage is the concrete operational period, and this is from 7 years to 11 years of age. And at this stage, they begin to think a little bit more abstractly about things. They begin to have a little bit more creative problem-solving skills. They also gain a fuller understanding of mental operations. So, like maybe they can do some mental math, without having to use their fingers and manipulatives. So I'm going to show you another clip, and this is the same experiment that they conducted with the little girl, where they pour the juice into the glass, but this little girl's response is different because she is at a different developmental stage.
So first we're going to look at these two cups right here. Do you think there's the same amount of juice in this glass as there is in that glass? There you go. Okay. So we're going to take the juice from this glass and pour it into this one right here. Okay, so now we're going to look at this glass and that one. So do you think that there's more juice in this glass, more juice in this glass, or do you think that they have the same amount?
Same amount.
Okay, why do you think that they have the same amount?
Just because this is skinny doesn't mean it's not the same amount. It has the same amount of juice in it, but this one is just wider and this one's skinnier, but they have the same amount of juice in it.
So as you can see, the little girl's response was different from the previous one, where she understands it a little bit more abstract concept. So it does appear like the taller glass has more juice, but she knows, because she did see before the two glasses next to each other, that they were the same amount of juice. The last stage is the formal operational period, and this is from 11 years of age to adults. Now, this is the most complete stage of development, and at this stage, their thought becomes more flexible, and now they are able to think more abstractly about things. So now that I'm going to show you another clip, and this is the first clip that you will see is a little boy, which is still not yet at the formal operational stage, and they give him a set of rules, and he has to reply. And then the following is a little girl, which is already at the formal operational period, and you can see how their responses differ.
If you hit a glass with a feather, the glass will break. And this is the second rule. Dawn hit a glass with a feather. What happened to the glass?
Nothing.
Nothing happened? Why didn't anything happen?
Because
was just giving them the set of rules, saying if you hit a glass with a feather, it will break. So automatically the little boy's no, it won't, because he knows he doesn't have that abstract form of thinking yet. So he couldn't follow that rule. He knew that a feather couldn't possibly break a piece of glass. And you can see how the little girl at the formal operational period, her response was different. She was just following the rule that was given to her. Okay, now we can get into the theory of literacy development. This is Holdaway's theory. So what is the theory of literacy development? Now, this is a theory, and I feel like it's kind of an extension of the cognitive development. I know as they change into different cognitive development stages, they do change in the literacy area of it. So basically it states that development of reading is natural and mimics the child's natural development of oral language skills. So basically what I got from this theory is that reading develops as language develops. So as I was reading this and doing my research on this particular theory, I had like a realization. Usually the struggling readers in my classroom tend to have poor oral language skills. Currently I have I like maybe about two students right now who are struggling with reading, and I came to the realization that I know that they have oral language problems as far as speaking and with speech, but I didn't really make that connection between that and the reading. But it does make sense. If it's hard for them to develop the literacy if they don't quite have the oral language skills yet. So during for this process, there are 4 natural components in order for them to reach full the ability to have the literacy. So the first is being read to. The second is collaboration, and this means just working with a teacher or with a parent, older siblings, working with each other with literacy. And the third one is practice. Of course, we know we get better as we practice, and I always tell my students, and that's why I put a little picture of a little brain there working out, because I tell them, your brain is getting bigger, you're reading, you're practicing, that's the only way you're going to get better. So your brain is a muscle, you got to exercise your muscles. And the last is performance. Of course, they want to feel achieved, a sense of accomplishment, reading in front of others, or maybe reading to you, seeing their progress and seeing their growth and all of these are central, I think, to the early literacy. Now I'm going to be talking about the stage models of reading. These are also 4 stages. So the 4 stages of modeled reading are the alphabetic stage, the partial alphabetic stage, full alphabetic stage, and the last, which is the consolidated alphabetic stage. And each child goes through these stages at his or her own pace. There's not really like an age, that you can label a child, at this age they're going to be at this stage, because everybody develops differently. So with the pre-alphabetic stage, it's also called the logographic stage, mainly because kids identify with logos, with what they see, so they could recognize maybe the McDonald's sign or like the Coca-Cola sign. They use visual cues, as form of recognition. I did have a year where I was assessing letter names and sounds, and we came upon the letter F, and the child immediately yelled, "That's Facebook." He didn't know the name of the letter, but he told me that was Facebook because it looked like the lowercase, F on the logo. And this child was obviously at the pre-alphabetic stage, didn't recognize the letter, but he did recognize the logo. So here's an example of the pre-alphabetic stage, and they're just samples of writing. So on the left, you can see a sample of an American child where they just scribbled, and you can kind of see how they're scribbling from left to right. And I found this very interesting on the right. This is a sample of a Japanese child, and you can see how he scribbled vertically, and mimicking the written word in his language, his or her language, of course. The next stage is the partial alphabetic stage. Here's where they start identifying words. It's also called the phonetic cue reading. At this stage, children begin to use maybe the beginning the ending sound of certain words as they're writing it. So this is an example of the partial alphabetic stage. So over here you can see where the child, let me move that out of the way, put an ODPS, like for the word octopus. And if you think about it, that those are maybe some of the sounds that you can hear, octopus. And over here they put a B and a T for the word bat, which is very adorable at this stage. And most of the children, well, I teach first grade, but I used to teach pre-kinder and kindergarten. And most of these kids, they begin to start with the partial alphabetic stage around October, November, around this time, where they've had enough time to be exposed to the letter names and sounds. They start picking it up very quickly, very rapidly, and they begin to start labeling items like house or mom. My daughter does this a lot too, so she'll draw a picture of her family and she'll put the F for family. And she's still at this partial alphabetic stage. Then we move on to the full alphabetic stage. Now children become a little more aware of the entire letters used in a word. They do have what we call onset rhyme, where if they put like at, they can hear that makes the word cat. And that's a hard skill for most. Now they start using they have the use of sight words or familiar words when they start writing. And at this stage, it's rather important at this stage to show the students different alternative ways to decode as they're reading, because there are some words that you cannot really sound out, and like especially with the sight words, and they'll sit there and try to sound it out, and it's not going to work out for them. So we have to show them, look at the pictures, or what do you see on the page, or trying to fit, so they can have these decoding skills and not necessarily focus on sounding it out at this stage. So here's an example of the full alphabetic stage. And over here you can see a little picture of a cat, and the little boy wrote, or the child wrote, I can see a big cat. He is playing with a ball. So he did spell some words correctly, which I think those are sight words. And then other words, he missed a letter here and there. And then the bottom one also, I will miss you. I really don't want you to leave. I love you so much, but I hope you have a great time. And of course there's spelling errors here, but at this stage it's okay. I don't usually correct them. I allow them to do this explore with the sounds, because they're not quite at the final stage, which is a consolidated alphabetic stage. Now at this stage, children read and write with, they begin to read and write automatically. And the word family, so they start noticing like patterns in words, patterns in their writing, and they begin to use these patterns to help them decode. Last week we were trying to write, one of the little girls was trying to write the word bunny. And mind you, this is not she's not at this stage yet. And another little girl who is at this stage started to guide her, and I was just paying attention to see how they were figure it out. The little girl's trying to spell bunny, and the little girl tells her, oh, bunny is like funny. Funny is our sight word. She's like, look at the board, and she's trying to explain to her, like, all you have to do is take off the F and put the B. And she's trying to help her out. So this little girl is already at this stage where she can use these patterns. So she was able to spell the word bunny from the word funny. She knows that they have the same ending sounds. And so this is an example of the consolidated alphabetic stage, and you can see it here. So you can notice the long vowel patterns with the words road and home. And so we use a lot of these little charts to not necessarily memorize, but just to notice these patterns while they're reading, and it's just easier for them. Like when they see the AY at the end, and they know play is a sight word, so if they can read play, then they can read day, and they can read May. And those are some of the things that, like some of the patterns that they begin to notice when they're at this stage. Now, so what is the big idea? What is the reason for all of these theories, and how can we implement them in our classrooms? One of the things that I had noticed is that students will learn new information more easily when they can relate to it. So if we're talking, and normally for the most part, whenever we talk about babies, all the kids know about babies. Everybody has a baby in the family, and if they don't have one in the immediate family, you know, they've seen a baby, they know what a baby is like. I don't know why these kids are baby crazy, but I'll read a book about a baby and everybody has something to say. So because they have that background knowledge about it. And when these children don't have that background knowledge, we use a lot of these theories, you know, realizing that maybe they're not at a certain developmental stage. So we cannot expect to teach them at that certain level, or we cannot expect for them to understand certain concepts if they're not developmentally ready yet. So 3 of the things that at least I do in my classroom are teach with the eyes, we teach with our hands, and we teach through the ears. So with the eyes, and these all apply to these theories mainly because we're trying to teach various different ways to address these different cognitive and literacy levels, stages. So with the eyes, we teach through visual aids and props. With our hands, manipulatives. Everything is very hands-on, especially in first grade. With the ears, I do sing a lot to them, but this is mostly for us, and we take the time to listen to our students, and I will explain. So with the eyes, we use a lot of concrete props, visual aids whenever possible. So here are some examples of teaching through the eyes, and here I have a lot of what we call anchor charts, especially for the little ones. It's very important to have visual aids. I have a lot of, well, actually this picture right here in the corner is actually a picture of my current classroom, and this was before we started the school year, so my word wall is blank, but it is now full and it is color coded, and so I have my phonics wall there, and all of my literacy and my math centers, everything, my journals, everything that I have around the classroom is either color-coded or labeled, or so it helps the children, especially those that come to you at the very early stages of literacy. They may not even know how to write their name yet. They may not even know how to spell their name, and all they know is that it starts with the letter A, and I have an Angel and an Anthony and an Ariana in the classroom, so they don't know which A belongs to them. So I have to use pictures. I have to use their picture. I have to label the items, you know, color code. This is a lot. This is how we teach through the eyes, you know, and this helps address the different cognitive and literacy levels. And then we teach through the hands. Now, we give children a great deal of hands-on practice with the skills that serve as building blocks. So in order, like for example, with phonics, you know, I'm not about to receive these students, you know, first year in first grade and start teaching them, you know, comprehension. We need to build gradually, you know, to get to that point. So we do a lot of phonics, you know, CVC, we manipulate words, beginning, middle, end, we do a lot of rhyme. And once they have that, you know, once they have that hands-on practice, then we can move on to the bigger skills like comprehension and main idea, or, you know, character setting and plot, and all of those that are a little more abstract. So how we teach with our hands, we teach with a lot of manipulatives. So here, this is a little mat that we use for CVC words. So they, you know, they slide the car over the road, and to make the beginning, the middle, and ending sound. Same thing with the little basket over here. It's just a lot of literacy as we're doing our guided reading groups. And there's different strategies, like I had said before, that we need to model those strategies so the kids don't get stuck at trying to sound it out at that phase. A lot of moving, a lot of hands-on stuff. And the last thing is with our ears. Now, we cannot expect the student to consistently see the world from someone else's point of view, and I think this is a mistake. A lot of us teachers, and I include myself because I've made this mistake when I started teaching. And you try to teach something new, and why doesn't this kid, like, why isn't he listening? Why doesn't he understand? But we cannot expect these children to learn, you know, or see the world the way we do, because we're already at a completely different stage than these children are. So we need to modify our teaching to their level, to their developmental level. And so we use our ears, you know, we take the time to listen. We are sensitive to the possibility that students may have different meanings for the same word. Students may also expect everyone to understand words that they've made up, especially with our population. I have the majority is ESL. So a lot of the vocabulary, they'll try to translate it over from English to Spanish, and a lot of it doesn't really make sense. The little boy was trying to tell me, she said, "Teacher, my homework romped. It romped." And romped? I don't understand. What do you mean? She's like, "Yeah, like it romped." And he showed me with his hands. I'm like, "Oh, like it ripped." He says, "Yes, it romped." But in my head, I'm like, why is he saying romped? But I made the connection between like romper in Spanish and romp. Like he's just trying to translate the word, you know, and he's saying it like he expects everybody to know that word. He assumes that's how you say it, you know. And so we need to, at this, just to address all of these cognitive, you know, literacy stages, ask questions, you know, and have allow your students, you know, to make mistakes, and have them feel free to, you know, to ask you, and know that it's okay to be wrong sometimes. So the key is to understand, you know, the various stages of development. I feel like as educators, it's extremely important for us to be aware and conscious that there are different developmental stages. And I know times are changing and expectations have, you know, have changed as well. But ultimately it's your classroom, you know, and you know what's best for your kids. So we focus on the development, on the different stages, and that will help us, you know, allow them to be successful and ultimately make us better educators. So to conclude, I put this quote directly from our textbook, which I thought was very on point with what we're talking about with these theories. It says, "Teachers need to understand the ways in which children think at different stages of development in order to create developmentally appropriate lessons and activities for them," which is, I think, on point with all of these theories that we just discussed today. So let's just focus on the development, you know, on the different stages, and not try to push the child out of a stage that he's not ready for. And so this was their presentation. Thank you very much, and have a good day.